Sometimes I sit back and look at the sheer timeline of human existence, and I just think, wow, we really are just a bunch of hairless apes running around with anxiety and smartphones. And honestly, it's kind of hilarious when you actually break it down. Like, seriously, if aliens are watching us right now, which they probably are because this season of Earth is chaotic as hell, they must be binge-watching us like a reality TV show called Everything Goes Wrong. Because looking back at history, it's basically just thousands of years of us making the same bad decisions, but with better technology. It all started way back in the day, and I mean way back, when our ancestors decided that living in trees was so last season, and decided to walk on two legs, which, by the way, was probably the first major mistake because now I have lower back pain at 25, so thanks for that, great-great-great-grandpa. Back then, life was simple but also incredibly stupid because your entire to-do list for the day was literally just don't get eaten by the giant cat with knife teeth and maybe find a berry that doesn't make you explode. And somehow we survived that, which is a miracle considering most of us today can't even survive a Monday without 3 coffees. Then someone discovered fire, and oh boy, that was the game changer. Literally the moment we went from scared prey to scared prey that can cook, and suddenly we're sitting around a campfire telling stories, which was basically the prehistoric version of a podcast, except the only topic was how Kevin got stepped on by a mammoth. Fast forward a bit, and we hit the agricultural revolution, which historians love to praise. But if you ask me, this was the biggest scam in history, because suddenly, instead of chilling in the forest, we tricked ourselves into working 12 hours a day just to grow some wheat that we couldn't even digest properly yet. We basically domesticated ourselves, folks, because before farming, we wandered around freely, and after farming, we were stuck in one spot guarding a pile of grain from other dudes who wanted our grain. And that's literally how war started, just a bunch of guys fighting over glorified grass seeds. Speaking of war, can we talk about how obsessed humans are with bonking each other on the head? It's like, for thousands of years, the technology changed, but the strategy remained exactly the same. I have a stick, you have a stick, let's see whose stick is pointier. And then we just kept upgrading the sticks until they became missiles. Then you get the ancient civilizations, like the Egyptians, who spent generations building giant triangles in the desert just because a guy with a fancy hat said, "Yeah, put my dead body in there with my cats." And millions of people were like, "You got it, boss," which just proves we've always been suckers for a charismatic influencer. And don't even get me started on the Romans. Everyone hypes them up as the pinnacle of civilization with their aqueducts and roads. But let's be real, they were also drinking lead wine and watching people fight lions for entertainment. So maybe they weren't exactly the geniuses we make them out to be. The Middle Ages were basically a 1,000-year gap year where humanity just decided to stop bathing and forget everything we learned. And honestly, if I had to live in a time where a scraped knee meant certain death and the doctor's prescription was ghosts in your blood, I'd probably just tap out immediately. It's actually wild to think about how much of human history is just people dying from things that we solve today with a $5 pill from the pharmacy. But back then, if you sneezed too hard, the village priest would just accuse you of being a witch, and that was the end of your subscription to life. Then came the Renaissance, which was basically humanity waking up from a long nap and going, hey, maybe we should start painting stuff and looking at stars again. And suddenly, everyone is an artist or an inventor. But let's be honest, it was mostly just rich guys paying other guys to paint them looking majestic. But the real kicker, the absolute turning point where things went from kinda crazy to absolutely unhinged, was the Industrial Revolution. Because some dude looked at a steam kettle and thought, I bet I can use this to ruin the atmosphere. And boom, modern society was born. Suddenly, we aren't farmers anymore, we're factory workers, breathing in coal dust and convincing ourselves that working 16 hours a day is progress. And sure, we got trains and mass-produced shirts, but we also got pollution and the concept of the weekend, which implies the existence of the work week, which I hate. And now look at us in the modern era, the supposed peak of human evolution, where we have access to the sum total of all human knowledge in our pockets, literally the Library of Alexandria in a glass rectangle. And what do we use it for? Arguing with strangers about pineapple on pizza and watching videos of dogs falling over. We went to the moon, guys. We literally put people on a floating rock in space, which is arguably the coolest thing ever. But down here on Earth, we still can't figure out how to make a printer that works consistently or how to drive in traffic without losing our minds. It's this weird duality where humans are simultaneously the smartest creatures to ever exist and also the dumbest organisms in the galaxy, because we can split the atom to create limitless energy, but we also invented the pet rock and paid money for it. So you tell me where we stand on the intelligence scale.
I think the funniest part about history is that it always repeats itself. Like we never actually learn the lesson. We just get better special effects for the sequel, doing the same greedy, short-sighted stuff our ancestors did, but now we tweet about it while it's happening. We build these massive empires, think we're invincible, think our way of life will last forever, and then history just laughs and hits the reset button, and suddenly the greatest empire on Earth is just a chapter in a textbook that kids complain about studying for a quiz. And look at our social structures. We still have the same hierarchy as the monkeys, just with different titles. The alpha male isn't beating his chest anymore, he's buying a social media platform and firing everyone. But the energy is exactly the same. It's just pure primal ego unchecked. Technology has advanced so fast that our monkey brains can't even keep up, so we're biologically wired to live in tribes of like 50 people picking berries and grooming each other, but instead we're connected to 8 billion people instantly, and our brains are just short-circuiting from the overload. That's why everyone is so stressed out all the time, because we aren't built for this. We're built to run from lions, not to answer emails at 9 p.m. or worry about the stock market crashing, which, by the way, is entirely made up. It's just imaginary numbers that decide if we eat or not. But you know what? Despite all the stupidity and the wars and the questionable fashion choices of the 1980s, there is something kind of charming about us humans, because we keep trying. We keep pushing the rock up the hill even though it keeps rolling back down and crushing us. We create art that makes no sense. We love things that don't love us back. We look at the dark, cold, empty void of the universe and say, I'm gonna tell a joke. And that resilience, or maybe it's just stubbornness, is the only reason we haven't gone extinct yet. We are a species of storytellers, telling ourselves that everything happens for a reason even when it clearly doesn't, just to keep the lights on in our heads. And honestly, if that's the delusion that keeps us from going crazy, then I'm all for it. The future is probably going to be just as dumb as the past, maybe dumber, with robots doing our laundry while we live in virtual reality pods eating nutrient paste. But hey, at least we won't have to hunt mammoths anymore, so I guess that counts as a win. And really, when you zoom out, none of this matters. We are just specks of dust on a slightly larger speck of dust orbiting a burning ball of gas. So you might as well enjoy the ride, laugh at the absurdity of it all, and stop taking yourself so seriously. History isn't a straight line of progress, it's a drunk walk home from the bar, stumbling into bushes, losing your keys, but somehow, miraculously, making it to the front door. And that's basically the human experience in a nutshell. So don't stress too much about your place in history, because in 100 years, nobody is going to remember that awkward thing you said in a meeting, just like nobody remembers the name of the guy who invented the shoelace aglet, but we're all glad he did it. Just live your life, be kind to the other hairless apes because they're just as confused as you are, and try not to destroy the planet before we figure out how to leave it, because that would be a really embarrassing way to end the season finale. And honestly, if we do mess it all up, the cockroaches will probably take over and do a better job, or maybe the dolphins. They seem suspicious, like they're just waiting for their turn to run things, and I, for one, welcome our new dolphin overlords. Anyway, that's just my take on the glorious mess that is human history, a comedy of errors written by a drunk screenwriter, but it's the only story we've got, so we might as well make the next chapter a funny one. If you enjoyed this descent into existential madness and want to hear me ramble about other things I barely understand but have strong opinions on, go ahead and smash that subscribe button, or don't, I'm not your mom, but it would be cool if you did. Also, drop a comment below and tell me which era of history you think was the absolute dumbest. Personally, I'm voting for the time we put lead in gasoline and thought it was a great idea, but I'm open to suggestions. Stay weird, stay curious, and remember, we're all just making it up as we go along. So you're doing great, sweetie. See you in the next one.